a student at Monash University. I acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation on whose land Monash operates, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. And just again, before we move in further, we are going to be recording today's session. So if anyone is not comfortable with that, they can exit, and we are going to record it so you can watch it at a later time if that's more preferable to you. So we'll start off just by going around the room so the panelists can just briefly introduce themselves. Anush, would you like to start us off, and then Sarthak and Charlie can follow?
No worries at all. Thanks, Hi guys, my name's Anush. I was an ex-Monash Energy Club member. I was the director of student engagement and the secretary at one point with Cav. And I am now a graduate engineer. I currently work at Beyond, City Power, Powercor, United Energy. It's a bit of a long one, so if you just want to say Powercor, that's fine as well. And I've just had my first rotation done with Beyond Energy Solutions.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarthak, but you can call me Sar. That's essentially the owner and operator of most of the transmission network in Victoria and part of the distribution network. I did renewable energy engineering at Monash. I finished in about July 2022. So I've been at the grad program at AusNet for about a year and a half.
And I'm Charlie. I work at Hydro Tas. I finished mechatronics engineering commerce last year at Monash and moved down to Tassie, and I now work in the control room at Hydro Tas. We own a lot of the generation infrastructure in Tasmania and a few other places across the NEM, and yeah, dispatch energy.
Great, thank you. So I guess what we wanted to start with is, I guess we wanted to explore sort of three key areas, like as part of our panel discussion. So the first one that most people had said they were interested in were the current trends and challenges in the energy industry. So the first question is, if you would like to put into your own words what you would say the current state of the energy industry is in Australia, and specifically what focus areas each of your companies are responsible for and what role like they're playing in the industry. So again, if one of you guys would like to start, happy to put your hand up.
Yeah, I'm happy to get started. Yeah, Hydro Tas has three separate.
So from my perspective.
Sorry, I think we're having a bit of feedback, but Charlie, I think we'll sort of started that one, and then Sarthak will pass to you. Sorry, bit lag.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, Hydro Tas has retail business Momentum, which operates in Victoria, selling power to customers. They've also got a consultancy, Intura, that operates around the globe, usually working on civil projects such as dams, but also energy infrastructure. And the main business, Hydro, which is generating energy from mostly, big lakes, big dams, but also we've got some gas infrastructure and a few other things like that. I think our place within the energy network at the moment is just trying to optimize our water storages over multiple years to get the best prices. Our stakeholder is the Tasmanian government, so we're trying to make as much money for them as we can. And I think within the energy network, we all know that there's a lot more renewable energy coming online. But the issue with a lot of that is that there's big periods where there's not much wind or solar, such as right now. Like if you look at the energy market tonight, it's actually reached its market price cap due to low renewables. And currently we've got a lot of 1 to 2 hour batteries in the market, but that doesn't really help when, we don't have wind or solar across multiple days. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we're seeing coming up in the next couple of years is, can we meet that challenge of big long-term renewable outages, or do we need more gas to compensate for that lack of battery?
Anush or Sarthak, did you have anything to add to that one?
I think Sarthak's just might have a dodgy internet connection. I'll just stay in the spot. But
There's always one. There's always one. That's okay.
no worries. Um, from my perspective, it is, I think Australia's energy market is going through a pretty rapid shift, right? We have 2030 and 2050 net zero targets. And because of that, we're getting a lot more renewables in the grid, just like Charlie mentioned. There's stuff like hydro, there's wind, there's solar. And I guess the biggest sort of, I guess, issue at the moment is just that conventionally we've had unidirectional power flow, which means that, historically it's been coal-fired power, generating power through the coal stations, sending it through transmission lines, and then over into distribution for customers. But what's happening now is that because of these sort of bigger wind farms, bigger solar farms, even rooftop solar, there's energy being pumped back into the grid, and it's just sort of setting up the infrastructure to prepare for it and sort of be ready for it in that sort of situation. So yeah, that's currently what some of the biggest distribution businesses in Australia are currently facing as a challenge. It's the technology, the integration, a bunch of the issues that come with it, the voltage, frequency, stability, those sort of values. In terms of what my company is currently focusing on, I've just finished up a 6-month rotation at Beyond Energy Solutions. They essentially do energy solutions through the EPC process, which is engineer, procure, and construct. And the biggest thing that they're currently working on is setting up these massive renewable generation sites, stuff like solar farms, some wind farms. They're even working on some stability mechanisms like synchronous condensers at terminal stations. And the other side of the business, which is the distribution business through Powercor, City Power, and United Energy, like I said, they're just sort of mostly focused on the renewable integration aspect of it, and even just using new tech like EVs, and that sort of new things that we're seeing on the grid, integrating that and making sure that we still have safe and reliable power to our customers.
Great. Sarthak, did you have anything to add from the AusNet side?
Yeah, of course. First of all, apologies. I had a few technical issues. My Zoom just crashed on me. So sorry about that. And apologize if I repeat something the other speakers have already said. But from my side, I would say I always think of the transition in Victoria as a dual transition. A lot of people just focus on the technological aspect of it, like moving from fossil fuels to cleaner energy and renewable energy sources. But I also like to add in the geographical transition, where if you just focusing on Victoria, if you look at where the generation is currently coming from, it's all mostly Latrobe Valley with coal and gas. Whereas now, with the transition with more renewable energy sources like wind and solar coming up, they're mostly based in southwest or northwest Victoria. So essentially, we need to change the way we transport power from our generators to our residential and commercial buildings. And I guess that's where AusNet comes in as well, being the transmission owner and operator. And of course, with part of the distribution network as well, we look at, like Anush said, we also look at connecting wind, solar, battery projects to the grid, but also looking at the network side of things, the network management with the voltage management, and how that can be stable, and how can we have a reliable grid going forward with more and more renewable energy sources connected to the grid.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think you actually covered a little bit about of my next question. So the next question was, what does the future of the industry look like, and also what role will emerging graduates have, and what skills might be most in demand? If you guys can touch, obviously you've got graduates now, so yeah, what do we as students sort of need to be looking at on?
I'd be happy to kick us off on that. So there are so many ways you can be involved in the transition, whether that might be on the consultant side, which are your Jacobs, Pekka, Orcom, KPMGs, or the developer side, which are developing your wind, solar, battery projects. Or you could be involved in the transmission and distribution network service providers like Anush and myself. Or you could be involved with government roles, whether that might be WICWID, AIMA, DECA, or any others. And mostly they look for electrical engineers if you want to be part of the transition from a technical perspective. They look for electrical engineers, but there's a lot of demand for a lot of other disciplines as well, particularly project management and business graduates or finance graduates as well, to get those projects off the ground and make sure they're delivered on time and to the budget.
Charlie, do you have anything to add? I know you're like working in spot pricing, so maybe there's some other skills involved there.
Yeah, no, I think Sarthak, sorry, nailed it pretty well, and I completely agree with that. I think there's so many major projects coming online that you can really have any sort of skill set and get involved in the energy sector. Like we're seeing big cables being built that need big funding, so you certainly don't have to have the technical skill set. And I think even thinking further abroad, there's a lot more startups in the energy sector coming online, so there's lots of options, things like that. Like there's a lot of small retailers, a lot of R&D labs popping up. And then a bit of a quirky one is the other side of all this generation and transmission stuff is that the major industrials, like the loads that use a lot of power around Australia, they're just as important for the transition. Like they're the ones who are using the power, and them getting more efficient and finding better ways of doing their processes are just as important. So there's certainly so many options out there for where you can look and can get involved. And I think, for hydro, you see a lot of civil and mechanical, and then of course the electricals as well. So just because you haven't studied electrical, it doesn't count you out of the energy sector.
Yeah, great. Anush, anything to add, or you feel like we've sort of covered it?
Charlie and Sarthak have covered some great points.
Yeah.
I'd even just like to add, there's a good chunk of new tech coming in the sector. There's stuff like battery systems. There's electric vehicles. There's a lot more focus on demand management as well. Synchronous condensers, virtual power plants, smart grids. I can just keep going. There's a huge chunk of new technology that's being currently developed. And I guess one of the bigger things that would be coming up would be finding a way to sort of assimilate them as a part of the grid and integrate them so that, it just sort of all sinks in harmony. And yeah, like 100% agree with what Charlie and Sarthak said. I don't think that the energy industry is limited to just electrical engineers. It's great if you have a technical backing and that's something that you want to do. But I've seen everything from finance pros joining in to lawyers, to project managers, and like everyone business related, strategy related. So I think all roles are pretty important in the space. And yeah, look, more than happy for people to just sort of come through it.
Yeah. We'll get to some more specific questions at the end if someone, has their own degree and really wants to flesh anything out.
Just quickly, sorry, one more thing that I'd like to add on that. With major transmission projects going up and major renewable projects going up, there's a big focus on stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, and community engagement. And a lot of the skill set that's required to deal with that aspect of it comes from marketing and communications. So you'll see a lot of developers and major companies that are looking into renewable energy go for a lot of marketing and comms majors, so they can sort of understand and sort of find a good way to make sure the community is on board with the project and engage with the community successfully.
Yes, no, I remember hearing something about some angry farmers who don't want infrastructure on their property. So I think stakeholder management and community management is a big one coming up, which does lead into my next question a little bit in terms of I guess people wondering what role is the Australian government playing in some of their initiatives and policies and projects that are actually shaping like Australia's progress to fully renewable and carbon neutral and all of that. Happy for anyone to take the question, so no one specific.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk from a generation standpoint on that. Like for a long time, there's been large scale renewable energy certificates. So if you're a renewable energy generator, you get paid for your generation being renewable. They're typically around $40 a megawatt hour. And so we can see that in the market, from a market response to this renewable generation, the energy price can sometimes go negative because they'll still be getting paid, up to about negative $40 a megawatt hour. They'll still be making money. And so that's one incentive for a lot of this renewable energy generation to enter the market, which is really good. And that's had quite a clear response on more renewables coming online. And then more recently, we've seen what's called the capacity investment scheme, which is trying to get a lot more renewable energy generation online in the next 5 to 10 years, which is being rolled out by the federal government, and something we'll see how it goes. But that's certainly something that at Hydro, we're like, how can we get this government funding and build more really important renewable energy generation that is dispatchable, so that we can dispatch it at any time of day, as opposed to just when there's wind or just when there's solar.
Right, I'm happy to go next. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of things that need to line up for the transition to be a success. And a major part of that are government policies. And up until now, at least in my opinion, a lot of the focus has been on the targets. You see a lot about, all right, we want 2 gigawatts of wind by 2032, 9 gigawatts by 9 by 2040, right? You see a lot of talk going on about, okay, these are our targets, but not a lot of talk going on about how are we going to reach those targets. So not a lot of initiatives or pathways on how we're going to meet those targets. And I think that's where the challenge lies. And I think that's where majority of the work is going to go into now. So if you join the industry, you'll realize that a lot of talks going on about, okay, no one knows what's going on, right? Because we're all trying to find the answers as we go on. And we're trying to find the pathways. Okay, we've got the target now, right? How do we get there? And I think that's where most of the work is going on for every single major party in the industry at the moment.
Spot on, Sarthak. I'd just like to add to that as well. Absolutely, yeah. Look, there's not a lot of clarity on how we're getting there, but then at the same time, I do believe that Australian governments and their corresponding entities can help sort of shape that in a way. So from a distribution business standpoint, we're sort of regulated by the AER, which is the Australian Energy Regulator. And we have something called the price resets, which is every 5 years we sort of submit a proposal, and that just sort of guides our next 5 years. So there are a lot of things coming in from their side, and there's a lot of touch points that they can set up around the way that they want to run distribution, transmission, anything that's regulated essentially that can sort of funnel all those different ideas and get us towards that common goal.
Yeah, great. I think that kind of concludes our section on sort of like trends and challenges in the energy industry. The next one is sort of moving on to career paths and opportunities. So I think a lot of people, like you said, I guess want a clearer example of like, well, what job will I do? Like, what would that look like? So I guess maybe you can talk to your experiences a little bit for this question, but what does the graduate pathway look like for emerging engineers in the energy industry, and what might the career progression look like for an engineer or a professional in this space as well? So I guess like you guys are all graduates, and maybe you can talk a little bit about like your pathway as just an example.
Sure. I'd be happy to kick us off on this one as well. So yeah. There are always what you call linear career pathways, which might be you start off as a grad engineer, go on to a junior engineer, senior engineer, principal engineer, right? That's the most standard career progression for an engineer. But the good thing about getting into grad programs is that you get to do rotations. And while doing those rotations, you experience different parts of the businesses. You maybe experience the commercial side, project management, things like that. And in that sense, you might go on to what you would call a non-linear career path. You might go from an engineer to a project manager, or an assistant project manager to a project manager to a senior project manager, right? So it essentially just depends on where you find yourself after the grad program. If you get into a grad program where you can rotate through different parts of the business, you could also go into operations side, whether that might be on the transmission distribution or like Charlie for a developer, right? So there I would say there are linear and non-linear career paths. It essentially depends on where your interests lie, essentially. You don't have to stick to the engineer, junior, senior, principal, right? That's not given. If your interests lie somewhere else in the commercial space, you realize, okay, I love doing financial modeling for a developer, right? You can go into that. You don't need to have a finance background to be able to do that. It's essentially where the opportunity arises and you take it, pretty much.
Yeah, great.
Could go next. Yeah, this is a bit of a weird one. I'll talk about my sort of career pathway that got me into the grad role that I'm currently in. It all actually started off with Monash Energy Club. Shout out you guys. Yeah, look, I got involved with the Energy Club because that was the only sort of presence on campus that was specifically interested in the energy sector. And that just seemed really cool to me. And joining Monash Energy Club, we hosted a bunch of events, a bunch of networking nights, and through sort of all of these events, you got to sort of, I mean, I got a chance to build and sort of grow on my network and understand what's currently happening in the space. Talk to professionals that have been working at their respective companies and businesses for a very long time to get some more matured experience as to what their career pathway has been like. And it even exposed me to something called the Australian Power Institute, API. And they're essentially like a talent funnel. They provide you, if you apply, I think they provide you with a grant and sort of summer internship that is sort of meant to be a talent pathway into the energy sector. So I got involved with them, and my summer vacation internship was at United Energy. Ended up staying there for the whole year. It was supposed to be a 3-month program. They just kept me on. I was like, sure, why not? And just kept going. I did my final year project with them as well. So I did an industry project with the same team I was interning with. And yeah, things just went well. A bit of a advice on there is just that something that I've heard through people has just been that, especially at internships, they're super important because if you do a great job there, they'd want to keep you on. And luckily, in my case, I felt like that's what was happening. And they kept me on, and that's when the grad sort of role started. So that's just sort of been my pathway. And to sort of sum up, I'd just say get involved, sign up to the Monash Energy Club, get involved with the newsletters, see what's currently happening in the space. And yeah, just network. Network is going to be your biggest asset.
I reckon that's some pretty good advice, Anush. Yeah, for me, when I was at uni, I didn't really know much about the energy sector, to be honest, and I was, did a few internships in consulting and a few other places, and wasn't too sold. And then got to my final year, and I saw all the final year projects come up, and I saw one in the civil engineering space, which didn't know much about, but it was about energy storage and batteries, and I thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. So I jumped on, I emailed the person who was running it, Dr. Roger Dargaville, and I was like, oh, this sounds great. Like, please can I get on this project? And I ended up getting that honors thesis, which was great. And so that was probably my first real deep dive into the energy sector, and that was in my last year of uni, and having not done any internships or experience in it. And I got to the end of that, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting stuff that I've been learning this year. And so I finished my degree, and didn't have any jobs lined up at the end of my degree. I was like, oh, geez, I don't know, this is pretty sweet. And so I thought, oh, the energy sector would be pretty good, and started out just cold reaching out to a few startups in Melbourne who were in the energy space, and they all got back to me, and they were like, oh, we don't really have a graduate program or anything, maybe in a few years sort of thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, fair enough. And I actually applied for the AusNet graduate program, and I got through a few stages, but didn't make the cut, which actually was maybe one of the best blessings in disguise, because I learned a lot from the process. And at the time, I didn't know hydro existed down in Tas, like as a company and what they did. And not until earlier this year, I stumbled across them, and again, cold reached out to them and asked for a job, and they said, why not? And I think a few of the things that probably help with that, like there's lots of free AEMO short courses that you can do. Some of them take like an hour. some of them take a couple of days, and so like you can sign up, do them for free, and then you've got that to put on your resume, and that always looks like something pretty good, especially because you can always talk through the basics of the NEM and like the market as a whole, so that you can show your understanding, which is pretty good. But overall, I think what the other two have summed up, it's pretty spot on, and it's never too late to sort of make that transition if you're a bit nervous for how to go about it. There's plenty of options out there, and I think what you realize is no one really knows too much about it early on because it's such a niche, specialized area that you start day one of wherever you're at, and you've got so much to learn, like the people before you who are now your seniors. So don't be afraid of not knowing things. It's very much the standard in the energy industry is lots of learning.
And Charlie, I'll just say we definitely missed out on that. We definitely missed out on you having been an AusNet, but that's all right.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is just like being proactive, like use your time at Monash as best as you can and like leverage the networks that we have available. And it is your career. And sometimes, you do just need to do a cold reach out, or you need to just upskill yourself in some way. But it's all in your hands. So I think that's the key takeaway from what everyone's mentioned so far. So we'll move into the next one. Okay, I feel like you guys have covered, maybe this one's like a bit more specific around the actual recruitment process in terms of what people might need to prepare. I think a lot of people get nervous about like interviews or online testing, etc. So I know you guys work at pretty big companies, so maybe you can give a rundown of what people might expect from a typical like recruitment process, if there's anything they can do to prepare.
Happy to kick us off with this one. So something that I've noticed of late, right? A lot of massive companies now have multiple stages of the recruitment process. So once you submit a very comprehensive online application which involves a good chunk of writing, the next step would probably be a phone call interview, wherein they just sort of HR probably will scan, see what your thoughts are, what your interests are, and if that aligns with the company that you're applying for. And the next step generally is like either an online sort of thing. I might be mixing up the order, but this is just something that you can expect. There's like a lot of companies do have an online application as well, where it's just a test, a problem solving test more often than not. And again, no wrong answers there, but that's something to consider. The third thing that I've seen happen most often is a sort of group interview, and it's not really a group interview in the sense of there's one recruiter asking everybody a set of questions. They essentially just put a good chunk of people in a room, and try to get them to work on a random task. It just could be anything, just to see your communication, leadership, and problem solving skills at that point in time. And that's generally, if you make it through that, you progress to the final interview with someone from the team that you're applying for, and maybe someone from an HR standpoint. But yeah, look, it can be very daunting having to go through all these, so many of these steps individually and make it through all of these. But again, just like you said, I would say just sort of leverage all the resources you have. Monash has a really cool career center wherein you can get your CV scanned against the job role that you're applying for, and an actual person will give you tips on how you can improve it and what you can add and change, so you're more likely to get the role that you're applying for. They even have, from what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't seen the website in a minute, but they have an online interview sort of a practice session wherein you can just sort of get into the platform, run through a couple of interview questions just to get you prepped up if it's an online interview or an in-person interview. So yeah, look, would recommend leveraging those resources. Use the Monash resources that you have, so you're not as nervous on the day, and you're more likely.
I think Anush has covered pretty much everything there. But what I'll add to that is, I think, good organization skills in terms of what programs, what jobs you're applying for. Because I think it gets to the point where you've applied for maybe 50 different jobs. And if someone's giving you a call, it takes you a second to remember, okay, what did I write in this cover letter? What did I write in this application? Or who's calling me, who this person is, or that sort of stuff. So I think just understanding or having a record of, okay, this is where I've applied, this is I've heard back from them, this is what stage I've reached, and that sort of stuff, just to keep track of the applications. Because you'll realize you'll sort of get lost in the number of applications you submit. And I would definitely recommend that. Submit and apply for as many jobs as you can, because you want to get your foot in the door. And you learn from, you want to
get that bread.
you wanna essentially learn from that application process. Like Charlie mentioned as well, he got a lot out of it, and that helps. I would say just keep applying and apply for as many jobs as you can while keeping a track of what you've applied for. So you can refer to that record in case someone gives you a call. And it's pretty much just a cold call. They're like, hey, I'm calling from AusNet regarding this grad program. And you're like, okay, who am I talking to? Right. So just keeping a record of the application helps.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I think I assume most of the people on this call are engineers, have studied engineering, and it's pretty easy to think that an interview is about talking about what you know. But I think that's a pretty common misconception. It's not about what you know, but about how you go about solving problems and just how you think in general. So you certainly don't need to be the smartest person in the room in that sense. Like, so I've been looking at a few interviews this year of people, and yeah, we certainly lean towards the people who, put their hands up when they don't know something and say that they don't know something. So, don't be intimidated if you get asked a technical question. Or I mean, do get intimidated. It's nervous. You're like, what do I do? What do I say? But yeah, you don't need to have the answers. Is the important part. You need to have the knowledge to know that you don't have the answers and be able to say, look, this is what I think, this is my hypothesis, but I'm not too sure. And I also think don't shoot yourself in the foot. Like, you can look out for all different roles. Like, you don't have to start as a graduate. If you see a role and you think this is above me, but I'd really like to interview for it. Sometimes it can be easier because it's actually a lot less steps. There's less assessment centers and the like, and you can get straight to the interview quickly. And even if it doesn't go too well, it's a good experience, and you know about the company. And I think there's a few exciting companies. Like, one of the companies I think all of you guys might be excited for would be something like Acacia Energy, which, like, they just landed $650 million of funding to build one of the world's biggest batteries. They're setting up a brand new control room in Melbourne. They're building batteries all across the country. So they're going to be hiring like crazy over the next couple of years. And like, it's like a no-brainer that they need everyone from every stage, and they're just going to keep growing and growing. So you can end up in a really positive place with someone like them.
Another thing I'd like to add to that is, Charlie, you spoke about technical questions and the questions and things like that. So I'd like to add that you can expect a lot of behavioral questions. So going into an interview, you might feel like, okay, it's just a conversation. And yes, it is just a conversation. You don't really have to prepare that much, but I would say still spend some time thinking about behavioral questions. It essentially goes like, all right, tell us about a time when you handled a stressful situation, right? So just having a few of those behavioral questions answered, you know what to expect. Whereas if you go into it not having prepared behavioral questions, they put you on the spot where, all right, tell us about a time where you worked in a team and resolved an issue. Your mind goes blank, right? So it's good having that preparation done on those sort of questions, and that really helps.
Sorry, guys, just a final point as well. Just great stuff, Charlie and Sarthak. I think you guys touched on some great points. Another tip that I'd probably give is that in addition to sort of building and leveraging your network, would be to start messaging people on LinkedIn. Just if you find, just search up the company you're interested in, go through the people, and just start messaging people. Ask them for a coffee just to get to know more about their career pathway and their experience. And yeah, just do that. And I got to be honest, a lot of them won't reply to you, but don't feel disheartened. For the ones that do, can be such a game changer. I have so many mates that have got referrals from some of these LinkedIn coffee chats, and that just increases the chance of them getting hired for the position they're applying for. So yeah, build your network, leverage it.
Yeah, that's all great. Great responses. And yeah, I guess like even from my experience, once you're applying for so many things and then you have so many interviews, like it will come naturally when someone does ask you that question again. You've done it so many times that you just like yourself, your story. So it's just like the first few times are always going to be the most stressful, and then you just like know who you are and you know how to talk about it. So yeah, as you go through the process, you'll be more confident. So in the chat, I think have just mentioned that I think we're going to just open the floor to Q&A just for the last 20 minutes, because I guess like people had a lot of specific questions and I don't want to spend the whole time just talking about my own questions. So does anyone want to start up? Feel free to put your hand up. Okay, Ethan Chong has just posted in the chat. Have any of the panelists worked with or alongside low cost per watt hour energy storage, such as pumped hydro or car batteries? If so, what are some of the ways into this area?
Charlie, I think that might be a you question, right?
Yeah, if that might be a me question. Like hydro doesn't currently have what you technically define as pumped hydro, although it is in the works. When Monash gets across, which is a second cable from Victoria to Tasmania, which is in the works, we're going to build pumped hydro up north in Tasmania, mirror that. But yeah, hydro itself is pretty low cost per megawatt hour. We get the rain for free. So you could say that our marginal cost to produce is $0 a megawatt hour, which is pretty nice. So it's more of an optimization problem as opposed to a cost problem.
Sorry, Charlie, do you want to just quickly give the audience like a quick difference between just regular hydro and pumped hydro, just so people know why this question? Yeah.
That's a great question. So with our hydro, there's two types of hydro that we have. One's run-of-river hydro. So you can imagine you have a big long river, you put a few dams in it along the way, and in these dams you put turbines, and so they spin and create energy. And so you've got a limited amount of how much you can store each dam before it spills. So you don't want to spill it because then you've wasted creating that power. So instead you try and time when you generate so that you generate into the highest prices in the market. Pumped hydro, a lot of the nicer pumped hydro, such as at Snowy up in New South Wales, the turbines can reverse so they can pump the water back up. So rather than run a river, they'll have a higher storage and a lower storage, such as two lakes. And so when the energy price is cheap, they'll pump it back up the hill. And then when it's more expensive, they'll create energy. And so it's effectively an arbitrage in the market of buying cheap and selling high, whether that's each and every day or over the course of many years doing that. And we're going to see more and more of it. It's really important for when we do have long wind droughts, which we've seen this year, because these energy storages, such as pumped hydro, will last a lot longer than typical batteries and are a lot less costly to produce for longer run times. I think the ways to look for, there's a lot of pumped hydro going on in New South Wales, specifically Snowy has some future plans for pumped hydro, and there's a few startups as well. I'd look at our Battery of the Nation team at Hydro Tas is getting very involved in actually purchasing these turbines and stuff. So that department within our organisation would be another place to look to. And then there's plenty of consultancies I'd also suggest, such as Insura or GED, or there's also a few international ones that I'd look at.
Great, thanks, Charlie. Anyone have any other questions? Feel free to put your hand up. Or okay, Will, if you want to. You ready?
Sorry, camera was off.
Hey.
Hi everybody. Hope you're well. Sarthak, I might have asked you this before at a previous thing, but maybe just for visibility across everybody, and for all the panelists too. To what role do your values, your personal values, and your ethics play a part in your decision to join the energy industry? Social responsibility, business ethics, just a couple of things to keep you going. I'll pass it over to you guys. Yeah.
I remember having this conversation at a previous MEC event, and So I won't take too much of your time. I might pass it on to the other panelists. But just to touch on that very briefly, I think part of a grad program, or essentially the first 2 years or first 3-4 years of your career, is just understanding where do your skill sets lie and where do your interests lie, right? And a couple of years in, you hope that your skills and your interests merge together into a role that sort of fits the mold, right? Fits your purpose essentially, and you find something that feels right, and that skill set, ethically speaking, and interests, everything combined. And for me, I would say that is something that takes into account network design, so transmission network design, transmission network modeling, so which is like PSSE modeling, but at the same time having that understanding of policy and stakeholder engagement. So you can understand the decisions you make on your desktop, on the PSSE model, or on the AutoCAD drawing, how do they impact for the people that live in the areas that you're working on, right? So having that understanding of the two, I think that's where I see myself being. And I think that's fascinating to me.
I guess if I was to talk about my morals and values with working in the energy sector, I think it's a much easier sector to work in than other sectors. Like a lot of engineers go into consulting for oil or say for the military. We've got a lot of submarine design in Australia and a lot of like BAE and other systems. But yeah, the energy sector is a really easy one to work on because you feel like you're contributing for some pretty significant change, and you see what's happening day to day and how that's going to affect the multiple years from now. I think it also makes you a bit more of a realist as well. Like Hydro Tasmania has a gas portfolio, and that's something that coming into it, I thought, oh gee, but wouldn't that be nice to get rid of? And then you see how important it is to use at the right times to ensure that if we have drought-like conditions, that we still can keep the energy sector online. So I think it humbles you a bit, and I think I've really enjoyed working in the energy sector because it feels like it aligns pretty closely with my values.
100%. No, great question, Will. Not too much to add. I think Sarthak and Charlie sort of hit it on the nose. It's always a good thing, right? I mean, the past 6 months I've been working at Beyond Energy Solutions, which does large scale renewables, and it feels good, when you work on things that do make a positive change, and when you just zoom out from your day-to-day tasks, you do realize, all right, cool. In some way or the other, my work is contributing, to a cleaner energy future, to like a less carbon intensive future. And yeah, it does feel nice when you work in the energy industry and you can sort of drive up these values and these changes that you want to see.
Thank you, guys. I think we've got some more questions in the chat, so we'll just get one from everyone. But Ken mentioned, is there any key skill or competency that you wish you had learnt earlier, and that would have made you more prepared now? Or do you, yeah, guys can elaborate on that. Maybe someone.
Charlie, go for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I'll also answer Ethan's second question within that question from
Yes,
Ken. Which I think, yeah, assuming you know nothing about the energy sector, assuming you're starting from scratch, you're like, this is cool, I don't know anything. I think the AEMO courses are great. I think there's websites like What Clarity, which is just a news website that publishes stuff that's going on in Australia. Same with Renew Economy. They both have daily or weekly newsletters. So I think that's an excellent way of just putting your toe in the water and being like, oh, this is what's going on. Renew Economy does much deeper, insightful analysis, and What Clarity just does like spur of the moment, like, oh, did you see this? But yeah, those are the three things: email and those two websites where I'd start. And then like internationally compared to Australia, like all the system designs are quite different. So once you start getting more and more experience, you'll realize there's a lot of nuance for where, depending on what you want to learn. Those would be my three key starting resources to look at. And I think going into the energy sector, as we said before, like, there's so many different places you can enter. So I probably couldn't pin down one specific skill that I'd use. Like I've used a lot of Python in my job particularly, which has been good, but I'm sure the others will have used different software. And I'll pass over to them to see what they think.
So just on to add on to that, for Renew Economy, they also have a podcast, and I find myself listening to that podcast quite a bit, and I listen to it back in uni as well. So that's a good resource to have. You need to listen to it while you're walking down to class or something like that, and that's really helpful. In terms of skills, I think you'll realize when you get into the industry, you learn a lot more on the job, right? I think I did one PSSE unit in uni, and I didn't remember much of it when I finished uni, but I found myself learning quite a bit of it when I started. And I would say you've talked about Python coding there, and I didn't do any Python coding in uni. I had the chance to choose Python for my final year project, but I ended up going with the classic MATLAB, right? But now when I look back, I wish I would have gone with Python, because in the industry, you realize a lot of people don't use MATLAB. So if you have the chance to, get Python going from your final year project or something like that, I would say lean towards Python, because that would really help. But yeah, you realize that you learn more on the job. So I wouldn't say there are any other key skills or competencies.
Great, thank you for that. We'll just quickly move through the questions just so we kind of cover them all. Are any of you guys interested in pursuing research at some point, and what areas of research do you find most interesting, given your industry experience? Everyone's like, no PhD for me, please.
I would say offshore wind, just because I don't know too much about offshore wind, and that's something that's coming up quite a bit. And seems like in Victoria, especially, offshore wind is going to be a big thing, right? A lot of people are relying on offshore wind for meeting those targets. And personally, I don't know too much about offshore wind, and I'd like to get to know more about it. And considering it's a very grey area, especially in Australia, it's very popular in Europe, but in Australia, so maybe offshore wind with the focus on NEM, something like that.
Yeah, I think the 4-year engineering degree definitely took it out of most of us, but I'm not ruling it out for the future. I know maybe in a couple of years, I'm sure some of us might consider research at one point. A couple of topics that come to mind are definitely the hydrogen space. It's super new. A lot of technology is still developing around it. And yeah, just a lot happening within the space. So if I had to sort of pick a topic to sort of do a PhD on, it would probably be that.
Yeah, I'd agree with Anush there. I think my degree's probably taken it out of me for now. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty interested in market design. But I think I'm pretty satisfied at the moment. Like, there's a lot of there's the Melbourne Energy Institute, which is like a lot of postgraduates go on, and maybe once a month or once every few weeks they'll give a free online talk about what they're working on. And so I find that pretty interesting, because for an hour or two a month, you can listen to these postgraduates from Melbourne Uni discuss what they're learning and what they're working on, and often it's pretty novel and advanced stuff. I think for me that's pretty satisfying at the moment. I'll probably leave it there for now.
Yeah. I guess that kind of leads on to the next question someone had, which is, what opportunities have you pursued for professional development since graduating? Charlie,
You go,
yeah. Okay, go
All
ahead.
right, sure. So I would say part of it, like I mentioned earlier, it's been a lot more on upskilling in terms of software that you're using, right? So doing courses on PSSE or things like that. But other things I would say are more soft skills focused, could be presentation skills, right? You realize most of the things that you do in the industry is stakeholder management. So you're speaking to other people, whether that might be people from your own team, other teams, or other organizations. And you need to know how to sort of present yourself and speak about things and essentially have good presentation skills, right? And that's something that's helped me quite a bit, right? Going out, and I think that's something a lot of organizations support as well, just pursuing your development skills. And a lot of organizations also have early career networks or young professional networks that might focus on development sessions for people early in their careers.
Go for it, Charlie. No, it's all you.
Yep. Okay. Anush, you're done. That's okay. So the final, I think. Oh no, we had two more questions. So, in the energy. Okay, it's kind of a long question. I'm sure you guys can see it as well. But just talking about any roles or opportunities that are focused on raising awareness about renewable energy. So for Brina, she has a degree in renewable energy engineering, currently transitioning into education, and she's curious to know what opportunities are available in this area.
I think I can kick us off on that. So
Yeah.
I would say there are no roles per se, but a lot of the organizations are starting to realize that there's a major skill shortage, especially in the engineering sector. In the engineering sector, and they're realizing that they have to, develop grads a lot more, which is why now you see a lot of grad programs popping up left, right, and center. But they're also realizing that, all right, we need more people. So they're doing a lot of workshops and things like that, where they go speak to schools and promote STEM in schools. And so I wouldn't say there's a role per se, at least not that I'm aware of, but a lot of the people in the HR team, they like to go into schools, or they like to ask one of the grads to go into schools to speak to the students about, all right, about STEM, and these are the roles that you can do, sort of just, making sure that we're addressing the problem at the root cause and going early career, very early life, and saying, hey, this is what you can do.
Slightly different perspective there, Sarthak. I think there's a big new focus on community engagement, as you guys might have seen with the Angry Farmers and all other sort of things. I know a lot of businesses are currently focusing their corporate team on sort of getting stakeholder buy-in for any sort of project that's coming in. There's a huge chunk of emphasis on sort of the community engagement aspect of it, which could be local councils, it could be even local, down to the local schools. So look, if I again agree with Sarthak's point, I haven't seen stuff directly on an industry point to just raise awareness, but that role would sort of encompass a lot of different things in relation to sort of community engagement. And yeah.
Yeah, great. We'll cover another question. I think Sergio mentioned generally companies are well known. Hold on. So generally companies mentioned for internship or graduate are well known, and there's a lot of demand for those. Is there any advice on how to connect or find smaller companies for the programs besides just networking? Charlie, I feel like you kind of went a little bit more that route, if you have any advice there.
Yeah, it's certainly a hard one. I'm still learning new companies that exist, every single day in the sector. They're so hard to find, and there's so many, but the big ones get all the airtime. I mean, it does depend what specifically you're focused on, like if you are focused on consulting or generation or whatever it might be. But I think, yeah, like often just looking across all the job boards and Googling and keeping up to date with the news, like I do think a lot of the time I find about new companies is stuff like the RenewalCon newsletter. I'm like, oh, I've never heard of that company before. Like one I came across the other day is one called Diamond Energy. It's based in Prahran in Melbourne, and they're claiming to be Australia's cleanest renewable energy provider. And I
Actually,
actually seen,
I've walked past them. They have an office on like Greville Street, and like I
yeah,
randomly just saw their window, and I was like, "Is this like a company or what is this?" That's so funny. Wow. Okay, keeping
yeah,
in
and
mind.
I've now I've met a few people from there, and like there's so many different ones. Like the thing that I keep learning about, there's so many auto bidders entering the market, so all the batteries are being bid by algorithms. So there's heaps of them popping up that you don't even know about. And honestly, it's hard to find them. Like you do need to keep looking, but I think that's also what you get rewarded for because no one else finds them. And so then if you sound real keen to them and no one else has found them, you're in a really good position. But I think just getting out there and waiting and asking questions is the best way I found, which probably isn't the answer you want to hear, but the way to go about it.
I think I'll add to that really quickly as well. I think Anush touched on this point as well, just messaging people on LinkedIn, right? And connecting. I know it's sort of networking, just social networking, but it goes a long way. Like Anush said earlier, you might find that, a referral from someone might take you to a job and you might find that interesting. So that helps quite a bit as well.
Alrighty. Well, I guess we're reaching 7, so that's our 60 minutes. I just wanted to thank you guys so much. I'm just wondering if everyone wants to just maybe say like a final few words, if there's anything you guys want to just shout out to the students here today. And then yeah, we'll say goodbye for tonight.
Sure. I'd be happy to kick us off on that. So thank you, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's been lovely. I always love Monash Energy Club events, and I would definitely recommend going to the other events as well. They really make a lot of difference, and you realize when you go to networking events like industry events, you speak to a lot more people, you learn more about the industry. So definitely recommend that. And also the AusNet grad program for next year is open now, and it closes at the end of the month. So you can apply and feel free to reach out if you've got any questions. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add, I saw a question on hot takes. I think my hot take would be that the transmission infrastructure is the biggest challenge coming up the next 5 to 10 years. It's too late for nuclear. And maybe all the frequency response markets will go to $0, but that's a bit more of a niche one. I'd say thanks for having me tonight. For anyone who had more questions about what I said or missed something I said and wants to reach out, or if you do want to be pushed in the right direction, feel free to find me on LinkedIn and I'll try and push you in the right direction and give you a hand. Don't be a stranger. And I'm sure Hydro Tas probably has graduate roles. So if you are extra keen on that, then definitely reach out and I'll definitely push you in the right direction. You want to move down to Tas, or they've got offices in Melbourne as well, so you don't even have to move. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Great. Thank you, Charlie.
Quick final word on my end. The energy industry is hot, lots of things happening, lots of movement, lots of new tech, and lots of potential, especially here locally in Australia. So, if you're interested, get involved. I would make the most out of my time at uni, sort of try to leverage all the resources you have, build relationships, have fun as well. But, on the professional side of things, you build relationships, step your network up, and yeah, just get to know people, talk to people, and that definitely helps. And yeah, look, just adding to some of what the other guys said, I can't really plug a Powercor program because I think they're closed already. But yeah, I'm sure I think there are vacation programs coming up. Powercor, United Energy, City Power, and beyond. So if you're keen on that, suss it out. Look at some applications coming in. If you have any questions, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just find me, first and last name. And yeah, thank you, Ina and Cav, for hosting this amazing event and having us all back.
Thanks so much, Anush. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great night. And thank you so much for the students that came along today. We've really loved having everyone. And we hope that everyone got something out of today, to push them in the right direction, which is the energy industry. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a good
you.
one. See ya.
Thanks all.